What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we have a review of Epica and their new album Omega via Nuclear Blast Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Omega is the 8th full-length studio album from this Dutch symphonic metal band, originally formed nearly 2 decades ago back in 2002. This new effort represents the final part of the metaphysical trilogy initially begun with 2014's The Quantum Enigma. Recorded in a villa in picturesque rural Holland over the course of a very intense week, this was the first time in years the band members spanning 4 countries wrote in the same room with one another, leading to a final product that Epica describes as highly coherent due to the free flow of inspiration. An album of unity, friendship, and the close bond that the band members share. And with all of that history now culminating in this moment, you get me, a blind newcomer basically jumping into Endgame without watching a single other Marvel movie.
You've been asleep, Cap, for almost 70 years.
Yes, this is another one on my list of bands to check out this year that I've been aware of for years, but for no particular reason have never listened to a full album from, and a highly requested one at that. Honestly, it's been a fun experience for me to do these, whereas many other reviewers are going to come at this with all of the context and prior knowledge of previous releases. I get to share a more isolated perspective on the album as a singular work. I had pretty much zero expectations going in, and for all intents and purposes was really just along for the ride. And what a ride it is. I'll just get right to the chase with this one. I loved Omega. Of all of the releases I've checked out this year with fresh eyes, this is easily my favorite so far. The first half in particular is jam-packed with action, drama, and the perfect mix of traditional and extreme symphonic metal for someone who enjoys the heavier side of the genre. Yes, if you like me are a bigger fan of things like Flesh God Apocalypse, Septic Flesh, so on and so forth, I think you're going to find plenty to enjoy with this album as well. After the somewhat obligatory intro, the proceedings kick off in full with Abyss of Time Countdown to Singularity. It's the trifecta of super catchy sing-alongs, highly aggressive death metal, and massive orchestral atmosphere made even more powerful by the backing of a full choir. No synth trickery here either. This is the real deal, apparently recorded just before lockdown went into effect. This is followed by the equally impressive The Skeleton Key, which has one of the most infectious vocal cadences I've heard in a long time. Seriously, the syncopated delivery of those verses is going to be stuck in my head for weeks, not to mention the proggy little guitar hooks and rumbling bass tone that break them up. Likewise, there are also some great moments for the death growls, thanks in large part to just how perfectly and sparingly they are placed within the greater dynamics of the composition. Seal of Solomon then takes us in a more Eastern-sounding direction with its lush sitar and mystical string melodies. Again, the chorals on this one sound monolithic, absolutely worthy of Milan's La Scala for a big operatic production. Joined with the head-bobbing grooves of the plodding guitars and drums, it's a hypnotic display made up of layers upon layers of sound. Seriously, the levels of creativity involved when considering that the band conjured all of this out of nothing absolutely boggles my mind. Those 3 right off the bat continue to be my favorites, but fortunately there's plenty more to enjoy over this lengthy hour and 11-minute runtime. Both Gaia and Code of Life continue on a strong note, the former dropping just one of many ripping solos and more earworm syncopated chorals towards the end, and the latter taking us again in a more exotic direction with its snake charmer flute, hand drums, and ululated vocals. Okay, I lied, this last one should count as a favorite as well on sheer atmosphere alone. I picture vast palaces and sandy locales with an entire court being serenaded. Then of course there's the 13+ minute epic Kingdom of Heaven Part 3, which which is its own progressive beast entirely, but honestly, I'm more spellbound by the simplistic and straightforward Rivers. I'll admit that this one initially didn't do much for me when it was presented as a single, but within the context of the record, it is a truly stunning and captivating work carried almost entirely by Simone, along with some very minimalist piano and strings similar to some of Mercure's more recent output. If you ask me, this should have been the closing track, as it feels like the perfect conclusion to all of the prior bombast. Now that's not to say I don't appreciate the final 3 tracks. In fact, I quite enjoy Omega, Sovereign of the Sun Spheres in particular. It's just that they almost seem superfluous at this point. My followers know that I'm a big fan of brevity, and while I'll praise this album in saying that it actually feels much shorter than it is, that's not to say it couldn't have been even stronger with a few cuts. In particular, I think I would put the acts to Synergize, Manic Manifest, and Twilight Reverie, The Hypnagogic State, which feel like less proficient and even occasionally clunky retreads of ideas already more effectively covered in earlier tracks. And then there's Freedom, The Wolves Within. I know this is a single, and I wouldn't say I hate this one, but the chorus is just so distractingly cliche that it's honestly a little embarrassing to listen to.
Oh god, how embarrassing.
Like I said, these tracks have their standout moments and merits and don't make the album drag so much as they just don't seem necessary. I'm sure they serve an important purpose conceptually, but I've always been more interested in how an album makes a complete statement sonically as opposed to within its lyrics. Putting a bow on this thing, I'll just return to the original premise. I really enjoyed this album. Mild criticisms aside, this is a very engaging and well-written record that perfectly showcases all of the best things that symphonic metal has to offer. Furthermore, it makes me excited at the prospect of digging into Epica's prior discography for even more exciting content. I give it a 9 for enjoyability. Again, I'll dock 1 point for the aforementioned imperfections, but on the whole, I enjoy the vast majority of this album from start to finish, even in spite of its potentially daunting runtime. I give it a 9 for musicianship. While I think that Simone and the choir pretty much steal the show on this album, there are also plenty of standout moments for the other instruments, and of course the songwriting is well beyond what I think most bands are capable of. And I give it an 8 for innovation. This was a harder area to score in this case given my lack of background with the band and even within the genre, but from what I've heard, this does feel like enough of a step forwards that I feel comfortable awarding an above average score. So an 8.7 overall and a B+ for Epica and Omega. Get it once again via Nuclear Blast Records. Y'all, thanks as always for watching, and let me know what is your favorite Epica album. How do you feel about this one from the perspective of a longtime fan? What other releases should I definitely check out? Let's have a conversation down in the comments, and hey, hit that like button and stick around. I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. More album reviews, interviews with bands on the podcast, lists, tier list, you name it, we've got it, so plenty of reasons to subscribe if you've not already. You can also chat with us on Discord and support on Patreon, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.